you've had a long day. I'll try to make it a little insightful and interactive, perhaps. I've heard some very great points about privacy, the digital ecosystem of publishing industry and how the business needs to evolve more, a lot more than what state it is in right now. And hopefully, with my presentation, I'm trying to catch your attention towards what sort of threats will come to your business and how do you protect your business towards that, right? So above the fold, the main notion behind this is a lot is written in media about cybersecurity, what's bad happening in the world, a lot of attacks happening. But then there's a need of growing realization that media publishing as an industry also is a lot vulnerable, to the cyber threats. And obviously there are various reasons like hacktivists and threat actors that bring those threats to you. So with that session, I'll just get kick-started and hopefully we'll have a good interactive session. There we go. Yes. So just let's rewind our clock like 20 years, right? I'm not talking about a long time, just 20 years of your life. When Akamai was founded, 1998, and this is the year where we saw the first attack recorded on the internet. Very basic attack, SQL injection, which basically tries to capture your database, username and passwords, or probably some very sensitive information from your backend database. Now today, 20 years, if you fast forward, many things have happened in between. You've heard Yahoo breach, 3 billion username and passwords leaked. You've heard attacks on many media publishing houses. 20 years down the line, today Akamai, at an average, mitigate 5 million of these attacks on a daily basis. And this is just one type of attack I'm talking about. So you can imagine the scale that's out there, right? But 2 decades in security is still a hard thing to solve, right? So typically focus on people, process, and technology. Let's try to understand why security is so hard. Why are organizations still playing a catch-up game in security? Because everything is changing faster than you can respond, right? There are emerging threats that were not there in that shape and form a few years back. Today, financial motivation as well as the other motivations behind the scenes get the threat actors or malicious actors to think in a different direction. If you are a publishing house, maybe they want to, let's say, plant a fake news on your site for some other gains, right? Maybe if you're talking about having a privileged content, something that can be given to only paid users, credential stuffing becomes an issue, right? So there's a growing threat landscape. So the way the people are attacking you has changed significantly because the digital ecosystem has changed significantly. And this has all happened for good. These are industry mega trends. Things like digital transformations, IoTs, the machine powering your machine learning engines as well as algorithms. This has all happened so that your business can grow. But obviously, it has led to many unexpected results, is obviously the attackers have also become smart and they know how to leverage these technologies to attack your businesses. So APIs, let's talk about them for a minute. And this is one of the most critical aspect of web or digital today that is consumed across all the channels. Doesn't matter if you're media or you are publishing or you are, OTT, banks, governments, pretty much every industry today runs on APIs. And to give an example of how APIs are consumed in some shape and form in media industry, obviously user experience because you're talking about various devices. So one of your important, daily thought is how do you really give that superior experience on any device that user brings in? Because you're talking about potentially millions of different devices. Each device may be having a different screen size, maybe looking at a different resolution. So how do you really make sure that you deliver a seamless user experience on any device, right? Then there is a thought of how do you really use APIs to bring more business. That's how more and more APIs are being consumed to generate new revenue streams. As an example, if you look at a simple example of Ola app today. Now, if you scroll Ola app, a few months back, you wouldn't even see that they had a tie-up or they would be pitching an insurance on the Ola app itself. Today, they integrate with different banks, fintech providers, where you can just go and maybe apply for a credit card right from the Ola app, right? This is all made possible through APIs because now you can interact with different third parties, have a bigger digital ecosystem with different partners. Agility is the next big thing, because now you don't want to be running into the legacy business systems or IT systems that do not let you do things faster. You need to roll out services or news or whatever your business is much faster to the market. That's why the agility comes. Data analytics, as we heard, is very integral part, and APIs really help you consume that. What channels and how are users interacting with your products and services? If you don't know this, then you've already lost one important step in gaining insight into the user interaction and basically enabling your businesses faster, right? And partnering is another key thing, because now you have a big digital ecosystem through which you can partner using APIs to different partners, right? But as fancy APIs are, and as easy they are to consume, APIs are also irresistible for attackers, because it's very simple, open method of transferring the data and exchanging the data, and hence you'll see many of the attacks now shifting towards APIs. For example, Obike, a very popular service, mostly in the North Asia region, China as well, and these got attacked on the APIs. The other example is T-Mobile, McDonald's, Instagram, just to name a few. So the number of attacks that you see on APIs are growing on daily basis, right? And one thing that we all need to focus on is you cannot treat APIs as the same way you treat your other digital content. So you have a website today that may be having some static content, maybe some dynamic content, and you think of securing your website alone is not being sufficient. Now you have mobile apps, or some of you may have or will have in future. So considering the amount of the digital ecosystem growth, you need to have a separate security strategy for protecting your API infrastructure, because API infrastructure is going to be really crucial for your business. Imagine if somebody's trying to log in and they cannot log in because your API endpoint is down. So API in itself typically bring microservices and functionality of the sites that can disrupt user interaction, as well as have a major impact on your businesses. So the kind of attacks that API brings is quite different on the table. It's not just a traditional web attacks where somebody's trying to deface your website, trying to DDoS you, or trying to extract some information, maybe a content theft as an example, but then you see much more targeted attacks on the APIs itself that can even bring down your servers that are running your businesses. DDoS attack continue to be one of these areas that APIs are targeted for. As an example, I'll give an example of WordPress REST API vulnerability. It's one of the plugins that WordPress had. Now, using a specially crafted packet, the attackers were able to alter the content of the website. And one of the customers, our media publishing customers, brought this to our attention last year, where their content was being altered, and the requests were actually, the API calls were being made from somewhere in China. Now, once we started investigating it, we found that this was a previously undisclosed WordPress REST API vulnerability that WordPress then launched the patch for, but then obviously using our systems, we were able to craft the mitigation for this, right? Now, most of, or I would rather say many digital publishing still relies on these type of CMS systems, right? This is where typically you build your digital platforms, and the underlying platform vulnerability can have a breach for your network. But then APIs is just one part of the story. The other part is as a non-human traffic, right? A lot of the traffic on the internet, presumably about 40 to 50% of the traffic on the internet is just bots, right? And bots are automated programs and script, not necessarily bad. You have Google bots, Bing, and things like that, some of them which works for your favor, SEO as an example. But then a lot of the content from bots could be used for malicious purpose, right? Again, I like to say this, bots are scripts, but the intent behind this is all human, right? So bots can do bad things, and bots can do good things as well, right? For most of our customers that we use bot management solution for, we surprisingly see different sort of traffic with different sort of intent that comes or target a different sort of website, right? And in the next course of few slides, we'll see how that impacts your business, right? So from the perspective of bots can be looked into two different major categories, right? One is sort of disruption that it brings to business, so business impacts, and then sort of disruption it brings to your infrastructure, IT impacts, right? Business impacts range from industry to industry. For financial service, bots present a very different problem. For OTT providers, very different problem, where we see a constant login endpoint abuse. Millions of stolen username and passwords being rotated and targeted by bots, where they're trying to gain access to the OTT platform. For publishing, it could be various things like scraping of a premium content. Content theft becomes an issue. Automated page views, where suddenly you see a virality of the content, but that virality is not through human impressions. These are all bots causing, right? Depending on what sort of business you are in, this may not be relevant, but then again, there are some implications of this. First is, if you look at it from the IT perspective, you have to keep adding your servers after servers in your infrastructure, right? Becomes a bigger IT cost at some point of time. Then your analytics take a hit, because today you're assuming that all the analytics that you're gathering are from humans. If you're able to cut down a lot of the noise from bots, then you get much more useful analytics that will help you take business decisions in a right way. And obviously, your IT teams keep chasing because your servers go down, there's a sudden spike, if there's a big media news that is getting published, and you suddenly see a lot of bots targeting because they want to get the news as well. Then you see your IT teams running behind, okay, the servers are down, we need to spin up more servers, that becomes an issue, right? On top of it, things like fake user sign up. So if your digital content is being secured by login, or you want a user profiling to be done for some reasons, then the fake user sign up, fake leads, credential stuffing becomes a big problem for media business. So if hypothetically speaking, let's assume how the bots interact with different sections of the site. So this is your website, but your website is made of various different functions. So you have a section of the website that has information only. One section could be login, another section could be a user-generated content, and some section providing a site functionality where the user has to do something to be able to gain something, right? And these are different sort of entities that interact with the site. So you have browser, you have mobile browser, or maybe an app interacting with your site, you have third-party data aggregation happening with third-party partners, and even the attackers acting or basically trying to connect with the website. So if you look at it from the perspective of just your website, right, there will be different bits and pieces or sections of the website that will be more useful to bots than the other, depending on what sort of attacks the bots are trying to craft. If the attackers are after logging in, that we typically see on the OTT platforms where, for example, things like Netflix, you see the username and credentials being sold over the dark web for $1. The user can log in and see it, right? It may not be a big deal for some of us because we share our username and passwords, but that it may be a big deal for Netflix, as an example, because they are losing out the revenue. Over a period of time, depending on your business and how you want to grow, this could actually become an issue. IoTs represent the other bigger challenge of security, because this is basically adding to the complexity of the already existing complex security ecosystem, right? So by 2020, the whole IoT ecosystem is going to see a big surge. We're still, like, a good amount of is already done, right? Billions of connected devices and a humongous amount of data that is being shared across the internet. Now, I'll give an example of one of the attacks, right, that was targeted to a very world-renowned cyber intelligence or cyber threat investigative journalist, Brian Krebs, if you would have heard about him. He's world-renowned. People know him because he gets into the depth of the different cyber crimes, very renowned journalist. Now, the attack was really huge, DDoS. Now, what Brian did before that is he exposed an underground network of the cyber crooks, which led to some of the arrests in South Africa. That's almost 2 years back. Now, after that, Brian Krebs' website was one of the websites that was protected by our platform. Now we started seeing a humongous amount of traffic to our platform, and I'm talking about 630 gigabit per second, right? To put that to perspective, that is more than enough to take down small cities from the internet, maybe biggest data centers of the internet. Typically, your data centers, you're talking about 20 to 30 gigs, gigabit per second sort of a capacity. This attack could have taken down maybe 20, 30 data centers at a time, and the biggest ones. Now, once we started investigating more, we found that these attacks were actually coming from IoT devices. So you had DVR cameras, street lamps, washing machines, pretty much well-spread smart devices attacking. And this led to the formation of the first IoT-based botnet that we call as Mirai, right? So these are the threats that are happening as we speak. This is not a threat of future. This is already existing, right? And how this was actually carried out, very simple. Because most of these devices, IoT devices, were using the default admin credentials. Your username is admin, your password is admin, right? The attackers were able to connect to these devices over the internet because these are all smart devices. They connect to the internet, work on API-based communication. The attackers were able to log in using the default credentials. Once you have gained access as an admin to a default page, then you craft your attack, basically the device becoming a SSH proxy, and you start attacking the different, in this case, it was a journalist website that got attacked. It could be bigger businesses, it could be anything, right? But just to put things into perspective, this is a threat which is existing. Mirai botnet, as we speak, continues to evolve. Obviously, we have measures, we keep closely track of how Mirai is growing, but then this is one of the attack surfaces that is really new in the market, and some of the things that we couldn't even imagine a few years back. So why should you care, right? I mean, I've just given you a glimpse of what sort of threats exist today that can disrupt your businesses. And media and publishing industry is not something which, is not being targeted. As we speak, there are many instances. If you talk about Wall Street Journal, Boston Globe, BBC, this year earlier, we had a big attack, using the malware-based system where most of the US-based news agencies, the networks got compromised. So this is one of the key things that I hope I bring your attention towards, that media and publishing industry is also under a very sophisticated sort of attacks. This is a report compiled by Deloitte. This is a global cyber executive briefing for online media. Now, if you look at some of the key themes out of the report, obviously the larger attack surface, because the attack surface now, media, digital ecosystem is growing. Somewhere it is very mature. If you look at, for example, US market, somewhere emerging market is still growing, where we are adding new systems, platforms to make business more digital or to reach out to the wider audiences. So the whole ecosystem is growing and the attack surface is expanding. We see more targeted attacks. Things like, websites are your #1 door of entry. So if you have a website today out there, many of the websites are vulnerable either to a DDoS attack or application layer security attacks, where the attackers could even plant malicious news, or even bring down your content theft, your user database theft are all prevalent and happening. Then you also see advanced targeted threats, where in some of the cases, the news agency websites were actually serving the malware to the client, possible through waterhole attacks, and even injection of JavaScripts on the websites because of the underlying issues. Now, security complexity is another key area that was discussed in this report, because most of you now would be using cloud in some shape or form, right? Now, the issue is that you started with Cloud A. Over a period of time, you realize that Cloud A, yes, it's good, fine, works now, but I also need Cloud B. And your data and your applications are now moving between different clouds and different data centers. Now, every time you have to think about security, you have to think about protecting your assets and application where your data is. Rather, you should be thinking about a security strategy which will give you an umbrella protection of, doesn't matter where your data and applications are, you should be able to protect that using a unified platform, rather than taking a step-by-step approach where you, at every point of inflection, you deploy a security mechanism. Overall, you will have a very scattered, non-reliable, non-uniform security posture that will lead to complexity. And obviously, the biggest challenge today is a lack of security skills. I mean, I can vouch for it. Being a cloud security company, which is the world's biggest cloud security company, We, as a cloud security company, face a lot of skill challenges to hire when you look out in the market. There's not sufficient people in cybersecurity space that we can hire. I'm sure this is one topic that is beaten to death on daily basis across the globe. As we speak, there are already 2 million head counts short in this industry, and the number is ever growing. So, lack of cybersecurity skills becomes another problem. How do you really make sure you have the right talent using which you can, have your robust security strategy? So what this means for you, right? For all the threats we've seen, obviously your increased risk as you're deploying your data and applications all over. Scattered systems, you run into increased risk. Your businesses are getting increasingly targeted. And the major pain area is most of you may not really have visibility as well, right? You don't know what you don't know. Many businesses, when we start working with them, are surprised the kind of bot traffic they see and they just didn't know about it. The kind of threats that they have on the website, they didn't just know about it, right? So obviously increased risk. Complexity is higher because you start deploying point solutions at every point of your data and applications. It will lead to a very scattered ecosystem, which will be very difficult to manage. And it will bring you less agility. Your business or security has to be a business enabler. Any technology has to be a business enabler because ultimately that's why you're doing it, right? And the more you grow and the more scattered systems become, the less agility you have. So what we are trying to do to help media companies is obviously we have a single platform on top of which you can build your security and digital performance strategy. So Akamai is one of the companies that cut across media, web performance, as well as security as whole. We've got a single unified platform using which you can build multiple strategies around it. If you want to have protection for your apps and APIs, we have solutions for that. If you want to protect your login endpoints because you're seeing credential stuffing and account takeover issues or user profile issues, then we have solutions for that. Then we're also moving towards more of a zero trust architecture now where every user access request has to be authenticated and authorized. Doesn't matter your internal or external users, right? For external users, you might still not all of you might have the login systems, but what about your internal users? Are you really making sure you have a right security strategy applied within your network so that no data leakage and no insider threats can bring down or have impact on your business? And that's why the whole notion of zero trust, giving a secure and faster access to your remote employees as well as your workforce that may